Hello, I'm Vivian Morgan, and I'm back after a long time away from my YouTube channel. And I'm here today to really try to clarify what narcissism is and what might be showing up for you in your relationships. It's a term that's been used a lot, and I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse and a thriver. I'd like to say I'm doing very well, and I help people as they move along that healing path towards recovery from a narcissistic and emotional abuse. I'm a licensed counselor, and I'm also an empowerment coach. So what I've noticed is there's just so much information around narcissism since I first became aware of it several years ago, many years ago actually, and moved through my own process of healing. And I find it fascinating, and I've heard from many people that it's something that's overused, oversimplified. We throw it around. Somebody's selfish. We say they're a narcissist. And I think there's some truth in that. I think that just like we can overuse the word depression. Oh, I'm so depressed today. Like if you're feeling down, um, without it really being a full-blown clinical depression. It's that kind of stuff I'm talking about, is that we take this term and we just apply it to everybody that has symptoms that are selfish. So I really want to talk about what narcissistic personalities look like. First of all, it's a continuum, like many other, issues, depression, anxiety, a lot of other mental health issues are on a continuum. So you can have high narcissistic traits and not have a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And oftentimes people with narcissism are not getting treatment. Not all the time. I'm seeing more of them in my office, but many times they are not. And because of that, we don't really have a good number that reflects the amount and frequency of narcissism that's out there. So this is, a field that is, up and coming. There's more and more research. I found that one site there's 12 different types of narcissism, another one there's 17 different types of narcissism. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, why it looks like that there's so many different types of narcissism. So hang in there with me. I'm hoping to give maybe a 10-minute talk about this, and feel free to reach out if you want more clarity or more information. I'm also going to give you my slideshow in the notes, and also a link to some more information about narcissism. So I'm going to share my screen with you, as I often do, to talk about this. Okay. So I want to know, when I'm talking about narcissistic abuse and when I work with clients in their recovery process, I actually am, the narcissist is typically not in the room or in the session, so I'm not really face to face with the person they think has narcissism or who has emotionally abused them. So I like to describe it, and my clients will often say, yep, that fits the bill, or I'm not really sure. And the truth is, you can be emotionally abused by someone who does not have full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And that's what I'm working with, is people who are recovering from emotional abuse. Narcissistic abuse is a type of emotional abuse. So first of all, here are some traits of NPD. And there's a link here on this slide if you want to go through the full criteria, which is included here. I've just included some other things too to look for that are like signs. So first of all, there's this, this is the typical grandiose narcissist. There's overt narcissism, which is also grandiose, and there's covert narcissism. These are the two big categories: overt, covert, grandiose, vulnerable. Okay, covert and grandiose are synonymous. Overt and vulnerable are synonymous. So I'm going to talk today about covert narcissism and what that looks like, and also give you some ideas for the vulnerable or covert narcissism as well. So grandiosity, this is a person who talks about themselves in self-inflating ways. They will often boast or brag. I'm really good at this, or I'm considered this, or I'm considered an expert, or I'm considered I'm really just lots of boasting and bragging. They may talk about their own accomplishments a lot. They have a great need for admiration. So if they're not boasting about their accomplishments, they may be talking about things that they know. So they could be a know-it-all, somebody that knows a lot about stuff and is telling you all that they know, and they're just the most informed person in the room. They're the smartest person in the room. And oftentimes narcissists want to be the best at whatever it is. So you will find that they very often highly prize intelligence, and they want to be thought of as being very intelligent. So you have a high need and craving for the admiration of others. In fact, I've run into, when working with, just not working, but knowing people who have narcissistic traits, if I'm not feeding into their admiration field, they keep trying to pull me in. And I feel this great like push-pull feeling, like I don't want to be supply for that person. And supply is the word for a person who gives the admiration and attention that a narcissist feeds off of. So that feed is called supply. Some people don't mind being supply. I've learned that too. I do not like being supply. It ropes me into an uncomfortable situation that I don't feel like is a genuine relationship, and I'm not in the need of any more relationships that are not genuine. So there's this constant crave for admiration, attention, validation from others, and you can see how this might play into social media with friends or likes or getting acknowledgement there. So those are the big two. This is a person who all the conversations turn around to them. They may never even ask you how you're doing or what you're up to. I run into people like that who, hey, how are you? And then they're off and running. And they've never asked me, how am I doing? What do I do for a living? How's my family? Nothing, but just about themselves. So these people can also have a tremendous lack of empathy. So if you are sharing your point of view, they may criticize it, or I call it needling. Like they might say, oh, but I don't agree with you. You did this, that, and the other. Or why didn't you say this? Or I could see what you're saying, but you also did this. So they're not good at giving you affirmation and support that you might need in that friendship or that relationship. Another key sign of narcissism or narcissistic traits is wanting to use people. So this is the exploitative behavior. So you serve a function for a narcissist. If you're a sounding board, you're giving them supply. If you're a person who gives them, you're just a very complimentary person, which I tend to be. I notice the good in people. That is supply for a narcissist. So they like people they can get something from. So whether it's approval, likes, maybe somebody they want to get to know, or maybe or you're in a friendship group, or you're with people that they also want to be aligned with. So they're looking at how they can use people in that relationship. And they often don't really care about their feelings or their well-being. And this comes up, I don't have it here, but it could be considered emotional volatility. This is the malignant narcissist, and that falls under the arrogance, the superiority. So let's say you disagree with something they say, or you are wondering, maybe you're not getting the support you needed in that relationship, and you ask about it. They're going to deny it, blame you for wanting it, act like there wasn't a problem. They're not going to apologize because they don't see themselves as doing anything wrong. And a lot of this is centered around a fragile ego. So they get defensive very easily, which is why the arrogance pops up. They're very easily offended. They're easily insulted. They don't like to think they've done anything wrong, and they will come back at you with that. And that's where the arrogance, the haughtiness, and some of the malignant behavior is like a narcissistic rage. If you really want to call them on something they've said or done that you feel is out of line, watch out. Especially if you've been building up to this by setting boundaries. I didn't like how you said that, or that's not really quite the way it is, and you want to address that, you might get a full-on narcissistic rage where they all of a sudden are pulling out all these ways they disagree with you, ways that you're wrong, ways that they can put you down to bring you back in line with this subversive view they have of you. So it's power over. They're always looking for power over the people they're with. And if you have a problem, you want to solve it, and you have any kind of, knowledge about them that they don't agree with, they're going to go into a rage to try to pull that power over you, control over the situation. So control and power. High need to be in charge and control or in a position of power. They often envy other people. So these are people who notice everything about everyone, and they're always comparing themselves to other people. And if they have more than, or they're better than, or, and this could look like a lot of things. It could, have perfectionistic tendencies. It could be around, lots of different ways. It could be, like I mentioned, wanting to be intelligent or smart, but it could have to do with looks or, workouts or anything. But just being the best is really important for them. Now, vulnerable or covert narcissists tend to have, they both have low self-esteem, but the vulnerable narcissist is not covering it up with this mask of superiority. In fact, they tend to complain a lot, and they're the victim a lot. They're a know-it-all in a victim kind of way. They've got a superiority in the victim kind of way. They're going to tell you everything that's wrong with X, Y, and Z, or this, that, and the other, and why they are right and correct about that. So I talked about the manipulative behavior, and sometimes they can lie and use control. Or I've seen narcissists when somebody says, they've done this, that, and the other to me. And I've had the narcissist say, do you really believe that I would do that? Like challenging my view of them, thinking this person is not believable. I've seen that in my counseling office, and I've seen that in relationships where people have shared a lot with me. But they use this power in the relational dynamic. Usually, when they're with other people, they're very much in control. And we'll get into Darvo in a minute. That is that's the whole malignant narcissistic rage that can come out. Typically does not come out when they're around other people, just with a one-on-one scenario with somebody they want power over. And we talked about difficulty with criticism. You want to give any kind of feedback, they're going to read into it very negatively, and they're going to come down on you, especially if it's one-on-one. The boundary piece is one that isn't necessarily in the diagnostic and statistical manual, but I find it very interesting. Narcissists don't have any boundaries. They think they should have access to all of you. They think they should be able to ask anything of you and not have a boundary. With people who I have these traits in my life, I've had strict boundaries around what is okay or what's not okay. I'm not able to watch your dog, or I'm not able to do this. And I've actually had somebody show up at my home with their dog. And I said, no, I couldn't do it. I had nobody else to ask, so therefore you are at my disposal. Not understanding that another person has a right to say no to them. In fact, they don't like no. If you say you can't do something or you won't do something, they see it as an affront versus just a personal boundary. And that's a really good clue when you are in a relationship and you're wondering, gosh, does this person have high trait narcissism, or what's going on here? And you say no to something. Notice how they react. Notice how they react if you disagree with them on a point. Notice if they get defensive. Notice if they try to see your point of view. People with high trait narcissism are emotionally volatile. They're not emotionally stable people. They get upset easily. They get offended easily. And that's what leads to what you hear about stonewalling, where they refuse to talk to you. They're going to punish you for challenging them. Or they're going to use gaslighting, which is the manipulation around the facts to get you to, look at a different point of view because they can never be at fault here. Or they're going to blame shift, which is, it's not my problem, it's your problem. And those are the tools that they use to gain power over in the relationship. You've probably heard there's different types of narcissism. Here's a slide that came from Hopeful Panda that I thought was pretty interesting. I've used it in my groups. And I've run across, obviously, overt and grandiose. The covert here, they talk about, coverts are often introverted, highly sensitive people, insecure, they can be withdrawn, and highly critical of other people. Often play the victim. I find they often complain a lot to the people around them about coworkers, about the world. I mean, nothing's ever right, I also want to kind of call attention to the communal narcissist. This is the person who sees himself as altruistic and helpful and generous. They want to be seen in all these positive ways. And they do good things, but for the wrong reasons, kind of thing. And they show malignant here, which is the one which is more hostile, aggressive. And I find that when a narcissist becomes malignant, that they can be very cruel, and they are looking to hurt you, and they'll almost do anything for the power over. And if you are an empath, a kind, a gentle, understanding soul, and you get caught with a malignant narcissist, I suggest you stop the conversation, decide it's gotten to a place that you're not comfortable, and walk away. You're not going to be able to continue a conversation once this person has become malignant. Those four are probably the ones I'm more familiar with. Cerebral is another one that I'm familiar with, so I guess 5 here. This is somebody who thinks they're smarter than everyone, always has to be the smartest person in the room, will often want to be with people to show how much they know about things. But I've shown this in my groups with I work with women in particular, but narcissism, a lot of women have narcissistic personality disorder too. It's just I like to keep the safe space for women. And a lot of them have noticed things like the sexual one, the somatic one, the seductive one. And I think the seductive really comes out in that love bombing phase. They're just very charming and cheerful and just flirty and very, you almost irresistible. But they want praise constantly. And if you stop doing that, they will drop you. So these are just some things to be aware of, the different types of narcissism. And just to know, what I think happens is that there's narcissistic, needs that are met through these relationships with other people, and this is just how it comes out, for that person. It's the same traits, it's just like funneled in a particular way. So I find that fascinating, and we talk about that in my group. So this is the Darvo that I was talking about earlier, when you are with somebody who you want to address a problem and you notice something you either disagree with, or you want to state a problem you'd like to work on together, and Darvo is their response to that. And that stands for defensive, attack, reverse victim offender. So what that looks like is initially they'll deny whatever you're saying happened. I did not do that. I did not say that. I did not go there. I did not. They just deny it. Or like it was no big deal. So I did that. So I said that. I don't know why you're even paying attention to that. It's not a big deal. And then they will typically reverse that to you. Saying, how could you accuse me of that? What kind of person are you that you would, why are you being so sensitive? Why are you reading into that when that had nothing to do with you? So you're the person now being attacked. And once again, this is because they're really afraid of being vulnerable. You have a problem. They feel one under you. They want to come back up. So they use deny, attack you, and now they're reversing that order, because the reason you're bringing something up is you've either been offended or hurt, or you have a problem with something, and now they're the victim. How could you accuse me of that? That's really unfair to me, and now you're making me feel really bad. So now they look like the victim. They're being unfairly treated. It's not you. Now you are the perpetrator and they're the victim. So they take, and sometimes it's called blame shifting, but Darvo is a very common tactic. And when I'm working with people, we're trying to figure out, are you, is the person you're with narcissistic? It could be a friend, a family member, by the way, a parent, a sister, an in-law, a coworker, or an intimate partner. And I will often ask about how they bring up problems with that person and what happens. And that's usually my first clue, just to get an idea of the dynamics. And I'll say, well, that's interesting. Have you heard of Darvo? And I immediately start educating people about the dynamics in the relationship. There's also these soft signs, I call them, of a narcissist. They're not part of the diagnostic criteria, but I cannot tell you how often these come up. Jealousy is part of the diagnostic, frequent enviousness. But one-upping, this is the person, we went to this restaurant, or we did this, and I was there and we did this. Or, you don't go there, you should go to this place. Or, hey, this just happened to me at work, and I got some kudos and I'm feeling kind of proud of myself. And they're like, oh, well, okay, but, look what I did. So these are people who are always trying to one-up. Remember, it's power over. People who can't regulate their feelings. And that doesn't mean they're always going to blow up, but they might shut down. They might punish you with not speaking with you, not acknowledging you, completely ignoring you. The other thing, this is so interesting to me. People who are in relationships with narcissists will often say they never feel like they're doing enough. The person's always complaining about whatever level of it, whatever they're offering in the relationship, it's not enough. They never feel like they've met that person's needs. And to me, this just really speaks to how deep of an injury that narcissist has, that they are never satisfied in any relationship because it's never enough to fill that. And I think that is the work when they finally do get to therapy, is to realize that they don't need to use other people to meet their needs, that they have got to do that reparenting, whatever wound that was, heal that in themselves, meet themselves there without using other people. And I think that is a big sign of narcissism, but also it's the root to healing. These other ones, like complaining a lot, very competitive. Betrayal is often a sign. It's not really a sign of a narcissist, but narcissists often will lie and not be loyal in relationships. They will often talk about people behind their backs. If something has gone wrong in a relationship, they will go outside the relationship and talk bad about that person to as many people as they can, looking for the validation that whatever their perception is correct. that they are once again on top. Narcissists are not self-aware. They don't really see what they're doing in a clear way. They have a altered view of themselves, and I think and Dr. Ramani, who's famous for her work with narcissistic abuse and narcissists, and I'm completing her program now to become certified, and she says one of the biggest errors or falsities about a narcissist is that they love themselves, because the truth is there's a lot of shame and self-loathing, which is why the mask comes up. And if you think about it, even for the vulnerable narcissist who complains a lot and puts a lot of people down behind their back and that kind of stuff, that's a way of one-upping, but doing it backhandedly. Anyway, we talked about comparison to others too. So, my question for you is, are you a narc magnet? And I found that I was a narc magnet. I have narcissism that runs in my family. I'm also a recovering codependent. I'm a highly empathic, highly sensitive woman. I am quick to take on responsibility so another person, especially in my family system, wouldn't feel bad. I'm the person who's always making the connections or over-functioning, as you might say. Of course, I'm healing, so I don't do that anymore. But I'm also very tolerant and quick to overlook people's flaws because I see that they're hurting. So this is that empathic kind of person who, when a narcissist gets in this relationship, they're like, "Ooh, yes, I need this person in my life." They'll overlook my faults. They won't hold me to accountability. And they're always so nice and kind to me. Okay? They're also drawn to people who are really impressive. People who are successful or reflects well on them, people, who your association with them looks good for them. Oh, she's my, my friend, or, my significant other, and other people are impressed. Oh, so-and-so, oh, it's really so great. Or maybe just attractiveness or intelligence. So ultimately, narcissists seek to be the center of attention and to have their needs met through other people. So if you're naturally helpful, supportive, you will overlook that, and you might say, "Oh, well, I'm giving a little more this time. It's not that big of a deal." But the thing you should remember is that most relationships, if not all, aside from our children, okay, all your relationships should be reciprocal. To finish my thought there, is that even in families, and I don't mean reciprocal every time. There may be a time in a relationship where you're doing most of the giving, the other person's struggling, but that other person then gives back to you. You shouldn't be the only person asking how they're doing or offering, support. It should go both ways. And if that's not happening in that relationship, slowly back away. Slowly back away. You don't have to do a major cutoff, but start setting your boundaries. Start thinking about that relationship. Start evaluating if there's a place that your needs as a friend, an intimate partner, a family member are met in the relationship. And if not, if you feel like you can ask for that, try to ask. And if that person is able to do that and they can say, "Okay, I can try to do that, or I'll try to meet you there," that's great. But these traits are pretty consistent across the board with most of the narcissists that I know and the narcissistic relationships that I'm familiar with in my work. So I have a group coming up. I run them twice a year. I'm doing them in the spring and the fall. And if you're interested in participating in that, please let me know. I'd also love to hear any feedback around what you're hearing today and if it makes sense to you. But either way, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. So thanks for watching, and I hope you'll look at some of my other content as well. Take care.